Yes. So now that we are recording, so we have a new company, Lady Bay Resort, and we have Lydia Kippe from that company. So who will introduce the company, and then we will proceed with questions and answers. We try to keep it to about 45 minutes. For some students whom we met today, it's a late hour. So those in Europe and Africa, literally it is like 3 a.m. Those in the United States, it's 9 p.m., or at least for those on the East Coast. And obviously for our guests from Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Asia, so that's an early morning, so they're probably busy with, eager to start the working day. So let's try to keep it focused. All right.
Perfect. Okay, sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Lydia Kippe, and I'm the General Manager of Lady Bay Resort in Warrnambool. So Lady Bay Resort is a 4-star complex located right on the beach in Warrnambool. Warrnambool is about 3 hours direct from Melbourne, but it's at the very end of the Great Ocean Road. So we're part of the Shipwreck Coast precinct of the Great Ocean Road. So our location is very scenic, very beautiful. There's lots of green grass, fresh air, open spaces. So we're quite appealing to a lot of international tourists and domestic travellers from Melbourne and interstate like Adelaide and even Queensland as well. So I've been at Lady Bay Resort for 10 years now. And I've watched it basically grow from its infancy to quite a well-developed business as we run it now. So we do keep quite a tight ship in terms of staff and our processes and procedures. And we do offer a number of guest services, but as a hotel, maybe we're probably viewed as limited because it's not as running as a big, expansive hotel, I guess you could say. So we have 85 apartments in 1, 2, and 3 bedroom configurations. There is free Wi-Fi, free parking, a full restaurant on site, conference facilities, day spa, outdoor pool and gym. And the beauty of Lady Bay Resort is that it's apartment style. So we really suit families, in international travellers in the FIT and self-drive market, because the accommodation is quite spacious and it has kitchen, lounge, dining, laundry, and everything you need to resettle yourself, really.
Lydia, you said it's a 4-star resort. I know
Yes.
what it means, but maybe some students don't. So what's all that star rating? So what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars? And apparently Dubai has a 7-star hotel. So what exactly?
Oh God.
So what are
So
those?
I guess it's hard to term it, particularly international, because there's a lot of countries where the star ratings are quite conflicting. So for Australia, for example, we're 4-star because the apartments are fully self-contained. They're like mini houses. There's a restaurant on site. There's free Wi-Fi. There's free parking. There's day spa facilities and the pool and the games and gym area. So I guess it's to do with the structure of the resort and the facilities that we offer. But if you were to pick up Lady Bay Resort and put it in China or maybe Bali or something like that, for example, we wouldn't be 4-star. I think that we'd probably be around the 3-star range. So it is hard to gauge because in other countries there are a lot more I guess features and offerings that they have in abundance in comparison to what Australia offers. I think Australia is quite expensive, and that may be the reason for that. So for us to offer what maybe Dubai does in a 7-star would be very unattainable, right, due to the high cost of everything.
And in terms of what you offer, I haven't been to Lady Bay Resort yet, but from what I see on the pictures, it seems like it's not just a hotel. So it's not only a place where people come to spend a night, right? So it's much more, it seems like.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's got a lot to do with our people, with our staff, our culture, and how we are as individuals, more so than just the structure and what the resort offers as a business. So we're a very relaxed team. We're very casual in some ways, but we can I guess we're very adaptable to the clients that we welcome here. But the majority of our clients are corporates, corporate domestic, family, holiday makers, and we have a small percentage of internationals, which is about 15 to 17% and growing. But it's more to do with our nature and how we interact with the guests, I think, more so than our procedures and policies. It's,
And
yeah, it's small house.
can you elaborate on that corporate part? So I understand how hotels work when I come as a tourist and spend a night or several days at the resort.
Mm-hmm.
When you say
Mm-hmm.
corporate, do you mean conferences or something else, or conferences and something else? How exactly does it work?
So conferences, yes, because we have the conference facilities here, but also workers that are coming down to Warrnambool to be, they might be a sales rep, they might work for the agricultural industry or the healthcare or the education department. So they're basically the three main bodies that visit Warrnambool for corporate or work reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So people are really surprised with Warrnambool and how strong our corporate trade is, because when you look at Lady Bay Resort, you get the idea that it's more suitable for holiday makers and families and that sort of market. But in reality, our bread and butter is definitely the corporate trade. Mm-hmm. And that is a surprising thing, because Warrnambool is quite a small city. It's only a city of about 40,000 people, but it's a very vibrant and important city to our region in Victoria, because we service a lot of smaller towns around Warrnambool. So in terms of Southwest Victoria, we are one of the biggest seaside cities in our area. So yeah, it's funny. It's basically a flip of the coin. During the summertime, we have the holiday makers,
right,
and school holidays, and then it transitions very quickly back to the corporate trade. So it is a very much like a quick swap over of the type of clientele that we see on a daily basis. And we're busier more so Monday through to Thursday night than on the weekends a lot of the time, which is really surprising as well.
So how's the weather in your region? So you said summer, winter. So now you have late winter, right?
Yes. So we're.
But in your time zone, so how cold does it get in winter, and how seasonal is it? Is it very different from summer to winter? Because everybody thinks Australia is a warm place, but I guess
Oh no, not where we are. It's been absolutely freezing.
But what is freezing by your standard? Is it like -20 or Canadian
12.
freezing or Australian freezing?
Not Canadian, Australian. So 8 to 12 degrees to me is freezing.
Plus.
So, yes.
Oh, that's not freezing. That's
yeah, no, you guys all think that's okay, but for me it's really, really cold. We do get a lot of wind and like sideways rain as well, because being right at the end of the Southern Ocean, we get that Antarctic. For us, it's very.
But you don't get snow even in winter.
No. There's been snow in the Grampians, which has been unseasonal occurrence as well. So the Grampians are about 2 hours away from Warrnambool, and that's a cluster of forest and mountains and lots of nature and wildlife. It's beautiful, but they've had snow, which has been amazing.
But so does that mean that your demand for your rooms is also seasonal, more guests in the summer and fewer in the winter? Is that how?
Correct. Yes. But we're lucky enough to have the strong corporate trade that it doesn't drop off a huge amount. So we've actually had a really busy winter, one of the busiest winters we've had in 3 years. So sometimes it's really unpredictable. You think it's going to be quiet, but then Warrnambool, there's a lot of development with wind farms happening for the next 5 years. There's also been expansions of milk processing plants in the area as well, and the healthcare department, the hospitals have expanded. So we've benefited on those sort of expansions and developments. And given that we're apartment style, we cater for people that want to live here for 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 months. Yeah. It's like a little house, so it's very comfortable.
Gordon, I see you posted a few questions, and at the same time, I have a number of questions by email. So if you maybe proceed with your questions while I go through the emails and sort the questions and group them by the topic from the email that you can send.
Okay. You got me on speaker?
Yes.
So, Lydia, it's great to see you in person. Thank you for participating. I'm really fascinated about, how do you attract overseas clients to your resort? Now, so I see two audiences. One is corporate and one is individual. The corporate, how are you really positioning yourselves with that international corporate audience? Like, I can see they could fill your winter slots because, corporates tend to look for good pricing, low risk to cancellation. They don't want to hold it in Hong Kong right now. well serviced. But how do you position yourselves to international corporates?
Well, we don't really. So that would be something that I would like to receive some feedback on, I guess. In terms of international, the only marketing I've committed to is mainly being targeted towards the leisure group, which has been in trade shows and sales missions. Having said that, I do meet with a number of companies that work with MICE and incentive groups with corporate groups. But I don't really get that breakdown from the companies, so that it may come from a company, from a company, from a company. So when the groups actually arrive to Lady Bay, or when I'm liaising with the company to book the group in, I don't actually know that they're here for corporate reasons. So it's not until we may ask the travellers or the tour leader themselves the reason for the trip.
Okay.
So
when you say
that's a difficult one.
When you say corporate, are you saying at an individual level more than, rather than a conference venue?
More so individual, yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you have enough facilities to hold conferences?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The only other thing I noticed when you had a breakdown by country, Indonesia really seemed underdeveloped, being the closest to your doorstep.
Yes.
And then Korea, that they have good wealth, and they do like to travel, and I thought they were more like the Japanese. So any reason why you think those are underserved markets, or it's just been your positioning and visibility?
I would say it's more to do with our positioning and visibility. I think Warrnambool as a whole needs to do a lot more in marketing our Warrnambool internationally. And definitely visibility. So any ideas around that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so the students will really need to think about and maybe even interview some corporates and some individuals in whatever markets they want, and try to identify what are the factors that would attract them and what type of positioning for that, and we have both summer and winter season.
That'd be great. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I see we have quite a few questions from the attendees, and I have here two brothers, Santana Epps and Seneca Epps, and you guys both had very good questions. Lydia, so in X-Culture, we have about 5,000 university students, and I see today most of the attendees are actually MBA students from different countries. But we also have a sizable group of non-student participants, which are either kids, pre-college teens, last years of the school, or professionals who are not students anymore but would like to participate in X-Culture. And so we have actually a total of 105 countries represented this year, with kids ages from 9 to 17. Most are 16, 17, but those two brothers, we met them yesterday. One of them is 9 and the other one is a little bit older. So Santana, Seneca, I saw your questions there and I thought those were good questions. Would you like to go ahead and ask them? Just unmute your microphones. Yeah. So Santana, you go first.
Hi, Ms. Kippy. My name is Santana, and I live in North Carolina. That's in the United States. Before the meeting, I was looking at the website and the online presence. So I want to know, how much weight do you put in your customer views and the usability of your website, and where do they stand within your marketing strategy?
That's a very good question. So I haven't really put a huge amount of time or money into my website. I do want to get it redeveloped. That website that you viewed has probably been live for nearing 5 years now, so it does need a refresh, and I would like to find one that has SEO capabilities that aren't going to cost a fortune, because when you look at SEO with other companies, it's very, very expensive. And given that Lady Bay Resort is individually owned by about 50 different apartment owners, I need to find cost-effective measures to market the resort. So that's a bit of a pain point for myself, is wanting to do many things but having constraints in terms of money. But the website is something that I do want to invest into in the next 18 months or so to get that redesigned.
So at this time, if I wanted to book a room at Lady Bay Resort, would I go to your website directly, or can I book it on Expedia or one of those hotel booking sites?
Either. So we do offer and accept direct bookings on Lady Bay Resort's website, but we have contracts with many OTAs, Expedia, What If, Booking.com, Agoda, and so forth. So they are leading in terms of receiving reservations. And it is because of their huge capabilities with online marketing and never-ending money supply to do so, I guess. So that's another reason why I've sort of never delved into SEO, because it would be so difficult to compete against Booking.com and Expedia.
Right.
So if there is a way, and if the students and so forth have some great ideas around that, then that'd be wonderful.
And do you or other hotels actively manage customer reviews? Like, for example, if I book a hotel at Expedia.com and view my comments, do you, as a service provider, first, do you even monitor those ratings? And
Yes.
if there's something you don't like, is there a way for you to dispute it, for example? How does this work with
No, that's one of the things I dislike. There's no way to dispute it. If you do, so we get an email confirmation that we have had a review, and if it's a negative review and you try to explain or justify the reason of that negative review, it doesn't look very good. So a lot of the times we would have to say, thank you for your feedback, we will take that on board. But having said that, and to be quite critical and honest with you, some of the negative reviews aren't really justifiable sometimes. And that's a difficult thing to address, not only myself but my staff, to receive feedback that's not really that is negative, but a lot of the times we can't do a great deal about it. Like sometimes they might leave and say the internet wasn't very good, for example, but during their stay they didn't come to the front desk to say, hey, my internet's not working in my living area. So we could have been able to resolve the problem. We would have rung the internet tech, say apartment 9 is suffering from bad internet in the lounge room, can you please boost it and reset it? So that's where it becomes difficult, is we can't fix it at the time, but then they'll go online and complain about it.
Very interesting. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I actually just went on Expedia and check your ratings. You have very high,
did you?
the highest in the region. I mean, I know you have 4.5 out of 5, and everybody else is like 4.1, 4.3.
Good.
So you have the highest. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure who
and we do
5, but and that's based on 565 reviews. So it's a lot of reviews.
Yes.
I ran them. Yeah.
And we do, my staff do take comments quite personally. We I think that's because we're quite involved in the business here. Like I said before, our culture is quite different. It's sort of like we're a little B&B competing in the big world of hotels, because we do operate quite interpersonally. So when that makes us quite I guess passionate about the business. So we do try to offer the best service, and we do try to make the guests comfortable, and we do try to resolve problems. So so that's that really.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, Seneca, you had a question too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Hello, nice to meet you, Miss Kippy.
Hi.
Who are your competition, and what do you believe is the factor that sets you apart?
Great question. The biggest competition would probably be Quest Apartments. They're another apartment venue located in the CBD of Warrnambool. And then we have a venue that's actually directly behind Lady Bay Resort called the Deep Blue. They're currently undergoing quite a large expansion to develop a geothermal hot springs, which will be fantastic. What sets us apart would be our location and our apartment style and our offerings. So the best thing about Lady Bay Resort is the accommodation is very spacious, and we're a beachfront property. So you can smell the salt air right out your front door, where there's beautiful walking tracks, a very scenic location. We also have a wonderful restaurant on site, which a lot of venues in Warrnambool don't have. And we also have comparable prices and quite competitive prices. So when the Deep Blue develops their geothermal pools behind us, I think that will benefit Lady Bay Resort quite a lot, and we could probably work together. So instead of viewing them as a competitor, we could work together and leverage off each other and maybe develop the area better together, instead of viewing it as a competitive venue.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. A few questions about geography that I see here in emails. So you said that many of your clients are local, some are international. Can you give us a little bit more information where they come from?
Yeah, sure. Domestic travels, the majority would be from Melbourne and surrounds, and Adelaide. So we typically, for holiday makers, they'll come down from Melbourne, which is 3 hours, and they may even continue through to Adelaide. So domestically, that's where the largest component of our trade comes from. Internationally would be China is up there, UK and Eastern Europe, and a little bit in Greater Asia as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of the markets that you're interested in, so I assume guests from everywhere are welcome, or there are some special areas that you're most interested in, or countries?
Guests from everywhere are welcome, yes, indeed. I am interested in the UK and the Eastern Europe in terms of internationally, because I believe they stay longer, they enjoy our facilities and surrounds, and they spend more money. They're not that conscious or worried about how much they spend. They want to get involved in the area and dine in the restaurant, have a beer at the bar and things like that. So that's, having said that, it's a difficult market to market because it's quite costly to do so.
I can imagine, yeah.
Mm.
Now, a lot of students are asking about your marketing. So you did about how you promote your resort, but so do you have any special strategy? What channels do you use to advertise? Is it mainly guests telling guests, or do you have some, I don't know, more formal marketing campaign in place?
Not really. So I guess we need to look at that domestically and internationally. So domestically, I don't do a great deal. Because I guess I rely on OTAs like Expedia, What If, and Booking.com to send me the guests. And with those companies, I do specials and packages. Particularly during the winter time, we may have a stay 3 nights, receive 1 for free, or a bottle of wine, or something like that as an incentive to book. I am a preferred partner with Booking.com, so that means I will appear in searches for the whole Great Ocean Road region, which is great for Warrnambool as well, because if Warrnambool's unknown to someone sitting in Melbourne or sitting in Sydney or wherever, and they want to do a Great Ocean Road trip, Warrnambool and Lady Bay Resort will appear. So with that, I pay a higher commission per reservation. So in terms of marketing domestically, there's being involved with the OTAs and doing specials with the OTAs. I also do email campaigns probably once a quarter, so seasonally, and I might release a new package with that. It may be a family package or a golf package or something like that. And we do sometimes TV advertising, and that's usually in the wintertime again, and radio advertising locally. And we're also involved with BEV, which is Business Events Victoria. So that's a corporate side of things, and Great Ocean Road corporate events. So I'm affiliated with those bodies which are more directed domestically, and GORT, which is Great Ocean Road Tourism. So that's our marketing body for the region. Internationally is a different thing again. That's probably the international market is where I spend my most time and money. So I attend trade shows. This year, I've done 3. So I was in Perth for ATE, which is the Australian Tourism Exchange, and that's a 4-day event that has numerous networking opportunities as well as one-on-one meetings throughout the day. So it's kind of like speed dating. I have my booth and I'm all set up, and my clients and guests will come around and sit with me, and we'll do a meeting similar to what we're doing now for 10 minutes, and so forth and so forth. So in that 4 days, I meet with over 120 international markets or ITOs or retailers or wholesalers. So that's the biggest international event in the Southern Hemisphere. I've been doing that for 5 years, and it's definitely beneficial. With internationals as well, I'm affiliated with ATEC, which is the Australian Tourism Exchange Council. And with ATEC, they offer mini sales missions. So I was in Sydney for a 1-day event, and I was in Melbourne for a one-day event. And excuse me, that's similar thing, meeting with Australian-based ITOs to sell your product and to set up new contracting and so forth. So that's probably the most costly and the most time and energy I put into international marketing. And I also went to China, can't forget about that, in May for a sales mission with Visit Victoria. So that was a 5-day event, and there was a delegation of 27 Victorian products that went to China. I was lucky enough to go to Beijing for a little bit of leisure beforehand, which was awesome. And then we went to Guangzhou for 2 days and had meetings and networking events. And then we went down to Hong Kong, which was brilliant as well. So the same format, meeting and networking events. So I met with over 52 buyers, excuse me, from China to sell Lady Bay Resort.
So quite a lot. I see Rachel and Anand had also questions about marketing, and I'm not sure if this answered your questions. Rachel, Anand, do you have any additional questions, or have they been answered now?
Oh, yes, I had another question about finances.
Go ahead.
So which department do you spend the most money and resources on, and would this be a problem to the company's operations?
Basically, what is
So
your
that would be
structure?
Yeah. So that's definitely the international market. So basically how our marketing revenue or marketing expenses work is, because Lady Bay Resort is all individually owned, each month the owners or each apartment gets charged a marketing fee or an advertising fee. So basically each year I have around 35,000 Australian dollars to spend on marketing. Previous years, prior to myself having control of the revenue, not a great deal of that marketing dollars was spent. I'm more in the opinion to spend it, use it, let's be consistent, and try and really target the international market quite strongly. So in terms of what I'm able to do, it's pretty loose, I guess you could say, and it's just up to me. So I make the decision. I don't need to run it by the individual owners of Lady Bay Resort or my boss, Peter, who has the management rights, and he also owns a number of the luxury spa apartments. I'll ask him, he'll go, yeah, go for it. So in terms of creating issues or needing it tech box, it's quite easy for me. So I guess I'm pretty lucky in that aspect.
So Lydia, can you explain that? So you mentioned several times owners of the apartments. So is Lady Bay is sort of a cooperative, or how is it structured? So it's not a single owner, it's like a collection of owners. How does it work?
It's a collection of owners. So it's considered strata titled. So basically all of the apartments are individually owned, and then there's the management rights of the venue. So that it details the restaurant, the laundry side, the day spa, and the management rights of the accommodation. So Lady Bay Resort is quite a different beast. It's like a business within a business within a business. So basically I need to keep 50 apartment owners happy with their net return for their apartments. I also need to keep the manager of the management rights happy in terms of the revenue for the restaurant, and keeping the fees down for the laundry, and making sure the costs are covered and the expenses are covered in that side of it as well. So it can be complicated, and it looks very complicated from the outside looking in. But for me, it just ticks along, and the way it's set up, it works okay.
So who are the people then who own the apartments? As I understand, they don't live there on a permanent basis. They sort of just manage them as little hotel properties within the hotel property. Is that how it works? So
they all have a management agreement with myself and Lady Bay Resort for me to manage their apartment on their behalf. So yeah, it is quite. Has it been
set up like that from the very beginning, or it was more traditional? That's interesting.
Yes.
So you're basically then a management company, essentially, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I have a big hat.
Yes. So done with airports, like sometimes airports run, hire a company that does the management for the airport, even though the ownership may be between the city and all kinds of other private entities.
Yep.
And then, so was the relationship, so the apartment owners do they have sort of some sort of a board that votes on some questions, or they just delegate all the power to you and then just watch? Like how much authority do they have over you, or you have over them? What's the relationship there?
So basically, I have all the power.
That's good for you then.
It's pretty easy. Like when I explain this, people, the reaction is, "Oh my God, that's huge. That's how do you manage that," and so forth. But I guess I'm lucky. I haven't even met probably 15 of the owners. I would walk past them in the street and wouldn't know who they are. Some of them don't phone me up. Some of them just see I don't even think some of them would even look at their statement each month, to be totally honest with you. So it is really relaxed. Sometimes I do have interactions. They might call me up after I process the end of month payment and question a few things or query a few things, but it's very relaxed. It's very, I guess, easy for me, so to speak, but I don't have any difficulties with them. The exterior of the resort is governed by an owner's corporation.
That's what I wanted to. So when it comes to maintenance, who's responsible for what? So,
me.
So inside and outside departments?
Yes.
So it's all centralized. It's not like I can furnish my apartment the way I want as an owner, but then you manage the ground. So you manage the whole thing.
Yes.
So then in that way, it's not any different from a traditional hotel. It's just a more different ownership structure, but it's managed as one different organization facility. So it's not really that different other than more. Okay.
Internally it is, but from the outside looking in, no. Yeah, you wouldn't know it, I guess you could say. I have had owners try to put in furniture from a thrift shop, which I've had to remove and so forth, but when we have redeveloped the apartments internally, updated furniture and so forth, we held a meeting for that. So we did that on the back of an owners corporation AGM, because internal matters such as soft furnishings aren't related to the owners corporations, but an easier way to get everyone together is to hold an owners corp AGM, do that proceedings first, close the meeting, then discuss the proposed furniture upgrade and so forth. So that's typically how we structure big decisions.
I see Gordon had a few very important questions that we should have asked in the beginning, and we kind of skipped. Do you want to maybe proceed with those questions?
Sure. So Lydia, first of all, I think you've given the students a large scope and opportunity in terms of the whole marketing area and where to approach, particularly looking at from whatever country they're coming from or as their team's address. I just want to explore how broad a scope, and this really actually comes from my wife, who's involved with venture capital for lady businesses run by ladies. Now, her reaction at first on Lady Bay Resort was, well, it sounds like a resort for the female gender. And for the corporate arm, that may not actually resonate quite as well. So the question was, how tied are you to the branding of Lady Bay Resorts, and is there opportunity, would there be scope to change that if the students do some market research or in various markets, they think, well, you need to actually probably have, do you have to have a name that resonates with the area you are in, or something that's more aligned to someone thinking it's not just a ladies resort?
Okay, that's a good question. Lady Bay Resort is actually named after the bay that sits directly behind Lady Bay Resort, and that's known as Lady Bay. In terms of name change, I wouldn't think so. There is a big history with Lady Bay Resort and what used to be known as the Lady Bay Hotel. So I'll give you a little bit of history. About 14 years ago, the old Lady Bay Hotel, which was an incredibly iconic hotel in Southwest Victoria, was here, and it was a live band venue. So it used to be awesome. Like, they had it great back in the day. There was wonderful bands that would come down to Lady Bay Hotel, and it was a very, very vibrant, iconic, nostalgic scene. So I still have guests come in and say, I used to stay here 20 years ago when it was the old dirty old pub, blah, 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 blah. And the owner of the Lady Bay Hotel from the 70s onwards is our current owner now, Peter Walsh, Cork. So he's quite a well-known publican in Warrnambool. And I guess there is a few emotional ties with the name Lady Bay Resort or Lady Bay. So in terms of changing the name, probably not. And that's why it has a lot of emotion domestically and locally for the locals
you
here.
know that buying a home with emotion is not a good thing? Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That might be why he won't sell it.
No, so all I'm saying is, okay, so that could be something that can't be changed, but recognize the implications maybe in some markets, because the international market doesn't know about the history and it doesn't have emotion and tie to it. So you got to think about, well, does that fit? Now it could be, well, okay, so how do we use Lady Bay in a more positive sense? Maybe try revisit, maybe it does attract it's a spa market for the lady, female gender things around there, but that makes a downy market on some of the corporates. So I think the students will have a challenge on how to use a position of that name. Maybe
the name. Yeah, it sounds kind of very nice and gentle. So I don't know.
Hey, when I meet,
that's to test out in the different markets.
Yeah,
because we don't.
Right,
that'll be interesting, because I never looked at it that way. I guess because I'm a local Warrnambool girl. I've known it as Lady Bay Hotel and so forth. But then having said that, people will check in and say, oh, you're the lady of Lady Bay, or things like that. Or when I meet them for an international trade show, they'll be like, lady with blonde hair, Lady Bay kind of thing. And they'll have that as a joke and as a relationship. So maybe I never thought of it in that term. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, for the students, it may be a good idea to conduct some market research and maybe, survey potential guests or corporate clients and ask them all kinds of questions from, would you spend some time there, maybe even to what kind of feelings does the name involve? So just to see if it's working for you and give some insights into how the property should be marketed.
For sure.
Lydia, I kept checking the ratings of your hotel at different websites. So it usually is top of the line. Like, for example, bookings.com gives you 9.2 out of 10, which is, again, the highest for the area. So excellent location, and several designate you as a perfect location. So apparently high ratings. So back to the question about ratings, everything seems to be very good there.
Good, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Karen.
I'll let the student go first.
No, go ahead, Karen. Karen is actually one of the professors here in North Carolina, so right here in Greensboro. So, and helps us manage Xculture, the Xculture project. So, Karen, please go ahead.
Thank you for your time, and this is a really exciting challenge. I did a quick search as we were talking, and this is going to sound like maybe an off-the-wall question, but in like the first 3 hits, I see a lot of talk about nudist beaches. Is that a different Lady Bay in Australia? Because it looks like you're beachfront with a rocky area, and there's a lot of, like on TripAdvisor and some other people talking about that. Is that a different Lady Bay?
Did you say?
I think it must be, yeah. Yeah, definitely must be. That's not here.
Seems to me like a selling feature.
So being the good student, I looked at the first 5 hits that I got on my phone, just.
Yeah. How funny. No, that's not here. But
okay, so it's in Australia. It's another place called Lady Bay. It's a little cove by a lighthouse.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to find that Lady Bay now.
Yeah, when I Google it, I only see Hot Springs. Is that the right thing?
Lady Bay Beach. Maybe that's for the.
I'm getting the right thing. So yeah, the Victoria one, the one in Australia. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like it's closer to Sydney.
Really? There you go.
No, it's like the very southern tip. Is that the one?
And it's a cove. So when you look at the picture of the nice harbor area, there's something similarly named close to Sydney.
Yeah. So when I Google, if I can share my screen. So when I Google Lady Bay, this is what comes up. If you can see my screen, is it showing my screen with the map?
Oh yes. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the place, right?
Yes, correct.
That's Australia. So right between basically Australia, Melbourne, that area. But maybe maybe there's another one. So that's the one that comes up when I Google it. So 9 point.
Sydney.
Yeah. I see we have a bunch of questions from students. So Pedro here and Anand, did you guys still have your questions? Or have they
Yes,
been?
please.
Go ahead.
Hi,
Go ahead, Anand.
Hi, Lydia. This is Anand,
Hi.
actually. My question is, this is a very conventional way of marketing, and this has been practiced even through ages. What my question is, are you aligned and are you collaborating with any travel agents, the bigger travel agents? So this means if I'm sitting in India and if I'm coming to, so this should pop up automatically in their screens, and they should say, look, this is the place where you need to go, and you do need to do this, right? So if I go through Thomas Cook or I go through any of the bigger ones, they should tell me that this is where you need to spend some time. It's really good. So my first question, are we aligned and are we collaborating with such kind of travel agents?
Yes, we are. In terms of the India market, that is a market that I'm very interested in. I actually want to do a trade show with Tourism Australia in India next year, potentially. We are not affiliated with Thomas Cook. I have met with a number of ITOs and retailers and wholesalers based in India that I have attempted to get contracting with. Sometimes it is difficult. I need to meet with them over 2 or 3 or 4 times. There's a company known as Well Travel that we are affiliated with. They look after India and Malaysia and maybe Indonesia, I believe. So yes, we are affiliated with certain travel agents, but I'm looking to grow that more so. And India is a very key market of mine. I think that where our location and what we offer at Lady Bay Resort is definitely well suited. It appears they're quite adventurous. They like walking. They like getting out in all kinds of weather. So the seasons, obviously our peak season would be more ideal for the Indian market, and they tend to stay longer. So we tend to get more 2 or 3 night stays out of the Indian market. Another market that we're not talking geographically, but I would like to infiltrate the VFR market. So particularly for India and for China. So the visiting friends or relatives. So that's when they may have a student, like a sister or son or a brother residing in Australia, and then their family's coming over from India or say China, and they're going to do a road trip around the Great Ocean Road. I would like to know how to infiltrate the VFR market for India and China in Australia. So that's been a little bit of not a pain point, but I guess an opportunity for me that I've been trying to infiltrate and trying to get information from ATEC, which is the Australian Tourism Exchange Council, and GSTR, so Great Southern Touring Route, which is another international body that represents our region in Victoria. So I guess if you had any tips or information or ideas how to infiltrate the VFR market, that would be great as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, because I do see an opportunity there. And with community, I completely resonate that's where we have, we can venture into the Indian market, right? Thank you. And we will definitely work on that. Second question is,
Perfect.
Is your team working on some kind of a data analytics for last 1 year or so, looking at which clients or which agents are actually promoting you and where exactly you need to focus? So that's the area that you're missing on, right? So is some kind of a data analytics with your database of the customers that you have?
Not really. So, and that's probably something that we could improve on or try to receive information from. So in terms of brochuring and having Lady Bay Resort represented internationally, I have done brochuring previously, mainly in the UK with Flight Centre UK and Trail Finders. So I've ceased brochuring with Flight Centre in the UK, but I've continued my contract with Trail Finders because that has been quite beneficial. My direct reservations from Trail Finders, which actually comes through to Lady Bay Resort from AOT and ATS, that's the largest ITO, in Australia, and they contract to Trail Finders. So the reservations and the revenue that I've received from that company has tripled in the past 18 months, and I know that's due to my brochuring with Trail Finders. So in terms of looking into and investigating how the companies that I've worked with previously promote Lady Bay Resort, I've probably been maybe a little bit slack. And I think that's definitely an opportunity that myself and my team can look into. Having said that, sometimes it's quite hard to find. So sometimes their websites aren't very user-friendly for me, and they might, you know, it's quite different in different countries. I was working with a company in Taiwan where they would actually regularly send me updates for the marketing that they were doing on my behalf. So maybe that's something that I need to look into and ask for when I meet with these companies next. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the 2 points we can definitely look into.
Perfect. Thank you.
Lydia, there is a question from Pedro and a few other students. So how easy is it to get to Lady Bay Resort from other countries, both in terms of what kind of airlines are flying there, and then where would one fly? Would it be to Melbourne and then drive, or the best way to get there?
That's a really good question. And I think that's one of my pain points, given that, I guess it depends what country you're looking at, but a lot of countries in Europe and in Asia, some locations, and particularly iconic locations. So I consider Great Ocean Road is an iconic location in Australia and Victoria. And to travel along it is actually quite difficult and extensive and long and tiring. And that is a massive misconception to a lot of countries, particularly the Asian market. And you would look at the Great Ocean Road on the map and think, oh, it's this tiny little strip of road, that's quite easy, but it's actually quite draining. And we have a big issue with day tours. Basically people or companies just offering day tours from Melbourne, going on the Great Ocean Road, then going back up from, once they visit the 12 Apostles, going straight back up to Melbourne. So there's a huge opportunity for Warrnambool and of course Lady Bay Resort with the immense amount of traffic that's travelling on the Great Ocean Road that we're virtually missing out on because of that lack of awareness of Lady Bay Resort and our location and the ease of getting to Lady Bay Resort. So Warrnambool's only 45 minutes from the 12 Apostles, but to some people that's too far, or it's unknown. So that's a massive opportunity that we can look into. So that's internationally. In terms of domestic, a lot of Melbourneites think that we're too far away, which I find quite funny because they spend half their life in a car getting to work. So Melbourne has terrible traffic. It may take some commuters up to 45 minutes to an hour to actually get to work from their house. So for them to travel 3 hours direct on a quite an easy one-way highway, I find quite comical. But that's I guess is an opportunity domestically for a campaign to really stress that we're not that far away. It's not that far away to get a beautiful beach escape, to get away from the hustle and bustle, and to have that fresh air. So that's an opportunity domestically, and I guess internationally as well. But given that we're, you know, a good 3.5 hours away from an international airport is a pain point. So that's a difficult thing for me. There is another little airport, that's of course Tullamarine Airport in Melbourne, and there's another airport not far from Tullamarine called Avalon. So Avalon has actually just launched a partnership with AirAsia. So we are receiving international flights into Avalon. So that might be a marketing opportunity that maybe they could investigate, of working with Avalon Airport to maybe promote Warrnambool and more so Lady Bay Resort. But yes, our location and getting to us from an airport I don't think it's difficult, but I think that's the perception, that it can be difficult. And the battle with the day trips is one that we have been trying to overcome for a good 5 or 6 years now. And yes, it is the idea of a day trip on the Great Ocean Road is becoming less appealing, because I think a lot of the tour companies have been getting negative feedback saying, I'm too tired, it takes too long, it's exhausting. And another thing to remember is when they do day trips, everyone gets to the 12 Apostles at the same time. So it's incredibly congested. So what I've also been recommending is doing the Great Ocean Road in reverse. So maybe flying into Melbourne, spending 1 or 2 nights in the CBD, getting your city fix, and then coming direct to Warrnambool from Melbourne, and then leaving the next morning early. So getting to the 12 Apostles early before all the tour groups. So that's another thing to look at into is working out itineraries. So that's what I try to do as well with the international market, is give them itineraries, give them options. So a lot of my time is spent promoting things to do in Warrnambool and surrounds to draw them to Lady Bay Resort. I think I'd be naive to think that they're going to come all this way to say stay at my resort. Yes, it's great, but there's a lot more things to do and see, which you need to package all together and capture to make it appealing.
I see we have more questions from students, but many of them are somewhat repetitive, so some of those issues have been addressed. But Gordon, I see you have a very good question about the local events. Do you want to maybe conclude the discussion with that question, because it seems to be very relevant?
Yep.
I think your microphone is muted. Yep. Should be working now. Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, what events are in the region that draw people in that you can package around? So I know about the Great Ocean Marathon, but are there others?
Oh, yeah.
So how do you actually package Great Ocean Marathon?
Well, the Great Ocean Road Marathon, I don't receive any guests for that. That's more Anglesea and Lorne area. They may travel on afterwards and finish the Great Ocean Road, but previous years I haven't seen an onflow from the Great Ocean Road Marathon. Warrnambool itself do offer a number of events. In fact, I think we have the most sporting events in the whole of Victoria in Warrnambool. So there's swimming carnivals, there's nippers, so like surf life-saving carnivals, nippers and seniors, surf life-saving. There's tennis events, there's basketball events, there's volleyball events, there's soccer events, hockey events, and football events. So there's a whole heap of sporting local community competitions that Warrnambool houses. There's also sprint cars. So we have a big premier speedway just outside of Warrnambool that run massive events throughout the year. One of the biggest ones is the Grand Annual, which is on Australia Day weekend. And on that weekend, there's 5 events in Warrnambool, which is crazy. So March Long weekend as well sees a lot of events. So there's tennis tournaments, there's a volleyball tournament, there's the surf life-saving tournament, and there's the Port Fairy Folk Festival, which is a huge event for folk music and local musicians that's actually in Port Fairy. So that's about 15 minutes from Warrnambool. So they're more, I guess they're more internal and more events in the local region. So I am working with the Warrnambool City Council currently to look at maybe holding more winter festivals. We're tossing up ideas for winter events. Over the summertime, the council puts together like a calendar of events and local things to do. So we have summer night markets down Lake Bateau every Friday night, which are fantastic. But I guess that's more centralised towards the local community. But
yeah, so those international events and things or things could turn into international events, and get the local council to work with you on that, on creating something to, project it up to, even if you leverage the diaspora, the Australian diaspora, or various groups in Hong Kong and Singapore, other markets, those networks to build up some international events to draw crowds in.
Oh, definitely. That's a massive opportunity. And I think that would be a lot of work and a great thing to infiltrate with the council. Currently, the Warrnambool City Council is going through a number of transitions with staff and roles. So it's been a little bit difficult, I guess, to work with. But I think, that's definitely a great opportunity. So that might be something that we could sit down and talk about and look at working with. And that's probably a great opportunity for some of the students as well, if they have ideas of the international events and what would work in Warrnambool and what we could piggyback off. That's definitely a great idea, because there really isn't that much going on here internationally events wise. So that's another interesting aspect I guess we could look at.
Lydia, one last question, if I may. We're a little over time, but seems important. So several students have asked about what kind of training one would need to become a manager of a major hotel. And another one is phrased, if you can go back in time and redo your training again, what would you focus on to be more successful in your current position?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Well, I guess I was lucky enough. I studied here in Warrnambool and I actually studied public relations, media and psychology. So I didn't think that I would be in this exact position 10, 12 years ago, to be honest. So when I first started Lady Bay Resort, I was finishing off my degree and I was working in the restaurant, just doing casual hospitality work. And for me, it's basically been a progression. So I migrated over to front desk and I looked at helping out with the marketing, and it's just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. So I guess for me, it's mainly been experience and knowing the business, knowing the owners and working with them to get to where I am. So
how long did it take you to rise to this position? How many years? How many years has it been with the company to rise to this level in the hierarchy?
10 years.
10
so
years.
I've been.
It doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just waited for I had to wait for the other manager to, go. I wish he hurried up. No, just joking.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's been a natural progression for me, and I was, I guess, at the forefront of developing the procedures, the contracts, the relationships. So for me, it was a really easy transition. It was literally a swap of seats, to be completely honest with you all. So now that I've got the title, but previous to that, I was still doing a large majority of the roles that I do now. So it was quite an easy transition. And the previous manager gave me the responsibility and the work to do anyway. So yeah, it was just a natural progression, and it's something that has been in the making for, yes, like you said, a number of years. So yeah, it was quite easy.
Yeah, we have a dedicated program at our business school, Tourism and Hospitality. And yes, while students all would like to manage hotels at some point, I think don't expect that kind of job right after graduation. It will probably take you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But if in another life, I think I would have. I often think about anthropology. I would actually like to be. I reckon that would be really interesting, but I don't know. Don't know. Who knows?
Well, never too late. So yes.
That's it. That's right.
Well, thank you so much. So I suggest we stop here for the students. One, if you have additional questions that maybe we didn't answer, you can always send an email, and we will forward the questions to the company. The questions that we receive by email tend to be repetitive. So we know you're busy and you don't want to answer the same question 10 times. So we could catalog them. And if it's a question we answer to, we just copy and paste it. If it's something new, we can forward it to you by email for additional information. And then depending on how things go, maybe we'll try to do another webinar towards the end of the semester when the students already have something on the paper and maybe would like to ask additional questions or maybe run the ideas by you and get some feedback. So, but there will be ways to communicate. Well, thank you so much. And with your permission, I will share the recording with our students. The time was, we had about 50 participants here, but obviously for most, it's deep night now. So they couldn't attend live, but they will watch the recording tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And,
perfect.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Karen, for being here with us. And the students, I see some of the names are from Europe and Africa. We met them yesterday. So for them, it's like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m.
Oh, God.
That's so we appreciate you being here, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay.